Then next we have Dr. Adero Allison, the Assistant Director for Services at ASU. Her background includes a tapestry of music, disability, and social services. Her experience spans over 40 years working with people with disabilities, from vocational programs to large systems change projects related to disabilities in work, home, and employment, and more recently with students in the undergrad and graduate programs. Thank you for working with our young people. In her current position, she works on coordinating the development of new initiatives to develop student supports that go beyond the provisions of accommodations to life skills and employment preparation for beyond the university. Welcome. Amanda Steele, our third panelist. Amanda Steele, she's a speech language pathologist assistant with advanced therapy and is the board president and co-founder of Epic Disabilities Advocacy. She is a dedicated mother of a remarkable 23-year-old son, does it look like it? And on the autism spectrum, who has profoundly influenced her life. I'm as a speech therapist with a caseload of neurodiverse teens and young adults, and the president of Epic Disability Advocacy. She empowers the disability community by promoting equitable access to resources, opportunities, and advancements. Thank you, Amanda. And lastly, we have Merlisha Henderson, who is Miss Wheelchair, Arizona, USA. Merlisha has been a supervisor at Toyota Financial Services for 21 years. Her career extends across business strategies and operations and organizational leadership. Her initiatives include speaking with other people with disabilities and working with them through their challenges as it relates to transportation and basic accessibility needs. Merlisha begins working with wheelchair companies to promote power chair accessibility with seat elevation. Thank you and welcome. Welcome to here. Okay, this is 1 billion. Why is this number important to understand about ableism? Understanding ableism is important because a very important portion of our population have disabilities. We have over 8 billion people on the planet, and about 1 billion people are oppressed because of their disabilities. This is why this is a very important subject for us to talk about, understand. So what is ableism? Again, we're just going to do some definitions here. Ableism is the discrimination of and social prejudice against people with disabilities based on the belief that typical people are superior. People are just normal, they think they're superior. So ableism is thinking that when you have a disability or that you don't have one, that you're superior. To understand ableism, a person needs to understand what disability is. So disability is any condition of the body or mind, an impairment that makes it more difficult for a person to, with a condition, do certain activities. So it could be all sorts of things. There's silent disabilities, there's visual disabilities, and that impacts the way they interact in the world. So it's 4 types of disabilities. Who knew there were 4 types of disabilities? It's 4 types. Thank you. 4 types of disabilities: intellectual, physical, and that's the one people typically lean toward to think about disabilities, but there's 4. Sensory and mental. So let's really break this down. Intellectual disabilities. Intellectual disabilities are the ones that people have that are cognitive functions. So like ADHD, autism, cerebral palsy, those are intellectual disabilities. Physical disabilities, and I think we all get those, the ones that maybe you're impaired, you can't reach, maybe you can't walk up the stairs, you can't walk, there's the physical disabilities, you can't lift, that could be a physical disability. Sensory disabilities, oftentimes this one's called a silent one. silent disability along with the other disabilities that we have. And this is one category that could be like autism. On the spectrum could be a sensory disability, which people maybe have challenges with their senses. And then lastly, mental illness, a disability, and that's a PTSD, that could be depression, anxiety. All of these are different types of disabilities, and these disabilities are in our community. So what is ableism? What is ableism? Ableism is discrimination of people with disabilities and or prejudice against them based on the belief, again, that they're superior. So types of ableisms, institutional ableism. That's an example, and usually like in the medical field where it's rooted in the idea that we can fix it. Like we can fix your disability instead of honoring it and giving people the tools so they can thrive. This typically can show up in the mental or like in the medical area. Policies, those types of things. Interpersonal. This is an ableism that takes place in social interactions and relationships. So for an example, when a parent who hasn't really just leaned in and accepted maybe their child's disability, they're just looking for a cure. I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna, every will of the way, I'm gonna fix this, instead of supporting and providing tools so that they can thrive. Internal ableism is when a person consciously or unconsciously believes in the harmful messaging they hear about disabilities. For example, a person may feel that disability accommodations are a privilege, not a right. So oftentimes I always ask people the question, when was the last time you went into a disabled stall? When you probably should have left it vacant for someone who needs that and maybe waited in line or used another one. Examples of ableism, asking someone what's wrong with them. So these are examples that people do every, in and out every day, consciously and sometimes unconsciously. Like, what's wrong with you? You don't look disabled. Well, if I'm suffering from anxiety, I may not walk around looking like that I'm disabled, but I have a disability. Viewing a person who's disabled as inspirational, like, oh, you're so inspiring because you're able to have a job in management. I'm educated, I'm well prepared, I'm qualified, I can do this job. Other examples, assuming that people that are physically disabled are because they're lazy or they lack exercise, like it's their fault. Using public facilities, we talked about that. Questioning them whether your disability is real. Is PTSD really real? Are you really suffering for something that happened to you as a child and you're an adult? Questioning people's disabilities, ableism. So before we dig further into ableism, let's talk about microaggressions in the disability community that people use all the time. And you know what, when I studied these, some of them I was guilty, I had used, and I had to repurpose once I understood what they were. So let's learn some stuff here about microaggressions. But before, let's talk about what a microaggression is, because everyone doesn't know. It's an everyday verbal or behavior expression that communicates a little slight, a little nudge, a little dig to someone based on their gender, their sex, their sexual orientation, their disabilities. These are those slights that people use. Some of these, next slide, may be offensive, so I apologize if they are, but this has been a learning so we can understand what are some of the microaggressions around ableism. So this is so lame. Person who's not walking may not feel like that's pretty cool. Y'all know what this one is. I'm not going to repeat it, but people still say this. People still say it and they think it's cool. When they do have cognitive issues. This guy is crazy. I mean, if you are struggling with mental disabilities, this may not feel or sound good to you. You're acting so bipolar today. You hear that, people go, I'm so bipolar. Really? A person who's struggling with bipolar will not think this is pretty funny. This is a disability that has to be challenged and managed. Are you off your meds? These are just blind leading the blind. I think I heard that actually a couple of days ago. It took all of me not to correct a lady in the grocery store. Almost did. Ideas fell on deaf ears, a person who can't hear. So these are things that people do, microaggressions. This is a pretty common one. I'm super OCD. You hear that a lot. Well, a person struggling from OCD, That is serious. That's not funny, but we say it like a compliment, like I'm so clean, but not really. So we want to, again, challenge ourselves when we start using microaggressions. So can I pray for you? Like you need help and you need prayer to make it, or, you know, we all do. Or I didn't think you are disabled, questioning your disability. So these are things that are microaggressions that happen that I'm sure you guys are shaking your head that you deal with all the time. So I wanted to go over some definitions and level sets so we can have this really engaging conversation with this panelist group. So let's go ahead and get started and start asking some questions here. Sorry, guys, I got papers. Okay. And we're going to start here. We're going to start with Liz and we're going to work your way. You ready? This big smile. So first question to you is, the term ableism is among the newer strains and from let's see the D&I vocabulary, like people are understanding what that is. Can you share with me what the term ableism means to you?
Okay, so for me, ableism is people who look at somebody and say, oh, well, they're normal. So I have multiple sclerosis. I'm actually in my 10th year of being diagnosed with it. And so a lot of times I get well, you don't look sick, or you look really healthy. You can run, you can do this, and not having an understanding. So I think it really came to a head during the pandemic. And you saw a little bit more blatant ableism, where it was, you know, if somebody decided to wear a mask because I'm immunocompromised, and it was, I'm doing this for me, I'm doing it for my family. And so ableism to me is you are doing something out of a norm, which this norm is made up. All definitions are made up. You're doing something outside of that, and it's different, and I don't like that.
Thank you. Ask the mic.
When I think of ableism, I think of it as a state of blindness that you don't see difference. And because you don't recognize that difference, you are not inclusive of other people. Your blindness to that social distinction, or that physical or mental or cognitive or whatever that distinction is in the existence in the entire world, means that you're not seeing the individual who has that disability.
I look at it as a form of oppression. I believe it perpetuates the idea that those with disabilities are inferior to those without disabilities. I believe it is going to continue to cause the marginalization and the exclusion practices that are still happening today. I'm the mom of a 23-year-old that was still legally segregated in these schools. We recognize that we are still legally segregating students because they are less than their peers. It's not true. We need to change that.
Experiencing pain with my arm, so I can't move that way.
I would definitely agree with you, ladies, especially when I think of ableism. I'm thinking of the discrimination factor. You automatically see it, feel it, just with your interactions with people. But it really is so deep rooted because it comes from a place where those that are having these conversations with us or making these comments don't have a lot of exposure to people that are sick. So these conversations, the workshops, the panels that we're having are extremely important to just, about bringing it to life.
Thank you. And thank you for being transparent and sharing how, personally how this has impacted you and what ableism means. Let's go to another question. What are some common misconceptions or stereotypes about disabilities that hinder the progress towards redefining ableism? Unfortunately, right?
I think I heard it all. From the moments when you're sick and people think, oh, you're just being lazy and things like that. But again, you really have to have those conversations and get in the mix with people that have a disability and find out what exactly is going on and educate yourself. I come across this every day. I just had a situation just recently within going to the store where I had a young lady that just came to me and she was just like, oh, well, do you feel like you're human now that you have a chair
Wow.
that you can actually elevate in? And, I have to say, I knew, the part of me, I'm never going to be rude, but there was a part of me that said, I just really have to explain, to her. And so when I can have these conversations and talk to people and let them know that comment was really kind. I understand where you were trying to come from, but your message may not be very well received with others. So I'm still human.
Absolutely, yeah.
Of course, in my chair, this is an extension of who I am. So I really, when it comes to the stereotypes, I've heard them all, people, like I said, they really do think that you're less than you. It's something that we have to try to, overcome each other.
Yeah, I'm sorry to experience that. I mean, I don't know, those of us who have a physical disability, be told you're not human, or maybe do you feel human because you have a tool? You have a tool to help you, to help manage things that you can drop and you can thrive.
Thank you. I'm gonna go with the inspiration and, full disclosure, I was diagnosed way later in life. So I was a mom to a child that I had never been around before. When he was first diagnosed, he was my beginning, he led my life. But so many people got so excited when I put him into sports and activities. So I created a page for him and I posted. And I'm gonna get a little emotional because all it took was something happening to him that led to being a violation. And that violation led me to wake up and realize, oh my gosh, I wasn't even asking my son if I could post this stuff about him. I wasn't bringing it to him. Is it okay if the world gets to fantasize on the fact that I'm helping you become who you want to be? So he was posted and victimized, and the students received felony charges for what they did to him, but it woke my family up in so many ways. So now anything that's posted on his page is with his permission. He reads it, he's a part of it, he is, but that inspiration can cause everlasting damage. And sometimes we don't realize it until it's a little too late, because he was pretty hurt when he realized how much I had shared about him, so.
Ableism, it's real. This isn't a conversation or something that just popped up. This is happening. And again, sorry, thank you for feeling safe to share. So thank you for that. Dr. Allison.
Yes, you mentioned stereotypes.
That's it.
I think that a lot of times people think disability is either is or isn't, and they don't understand the space in between. So if you say, I'm blind, they think you can't see anything, where a lot of people are legally blind but can see something. And
Good point.
there are all of these spaces in between, and because they see inability, you can't do anything. You can't think, you can't move, you can't do anything. And they don't see the spectrum and just find out, well, where would you need my assistance? And, just let me know if you need my assistance, rather than assuming I can't do anything.
So just real quick, I'm gonna follow up. What do you think get in people's way of just stepping in and asking those questions?
Asking where you need my help. I think they assume that you just need everything. So I'm the oldest person on this panel, so I'll tell you that when I was growing up, we were told, don't look at that person because they were in a wheelchair. So a lot of that is still passed on, don't look, which means you don't see disability, and therefore you don't see the person. And it's changing, but it's changing person by person in venues like this. So for people who stay in their neighborhood and their family and don't come to venues like this, it's not changing as fast, and they're passing on that same kind of blindness to their children. And it's a social blindness. It's not a physical blindness, but it's a block that avoids seeing difference.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
I think for me, thinking that it's a monolith. So when I I don't like sharing that I have MS because I hate when, oh, well, I know somebody who has MS and have you tried X, Y, and Z? Because I think a lot of times the assumption is I did it to myself. I caused my MS and I am in control of it, which especially during the summer for me, I am not. It's a very heat intolerant disease, and the assumption that you know somebody with a similar experience makes you an expert in what that person is dealing with. So I've met a lot of people with MS and we're also different. And I think that asking the questions, I think one of the reasons people don't want to ask questions is because we have been taught to look away. We have been taught it's rude. Whereas my favorite question is, how can I support you? Because sometimes I'm like, you can't, I'm good. But sometimes it's like, actually, this is what you can do for me. And just offering that. And I worked with kids for 17 years, and I think little kids especially can be really, I mean, they're so inclusive until they learn not to be. So I had 8th graders, I had seniors, and you can definitely tell the difference. My daughter is here today. She is a 7th grader. But a lot of times when I would tell my students, you know, I really am struggling today, can't get my words out, I'm really struggling with this, they were like, okay. And that was the day. But I felt safe in that space to say that to them. There were classes, would have never said it. Because not every kid is ready to hear that. They don't come from a home like that, and it's not a fault. It is, they just haven't learned it yet.
Right. And what I'm hearing is, like you said, you felt safe just to be yourself, you know, and what all from everything that comes with you. And in some spaces you're not. Thank you. So another question here, what steps can organizations take to create a more inclusive and accessible workplace environment for individuals with disabilities?
So for this one, I think, again, the pandemic really brought remote work to life, which for me is a godsend, especially in the summer. I can do everything in my job from my house, and it's wonderful. I don't have to deal with the heat, which for me leads to exhaustion. It drains me completely. Ridding yourself of assumptions that all disabled persons need X. I need to make sure we have X. And there are things, you know, the Americans with Disability Act, legislation you can look at. But being aware of why you think what you think, where that belief came from, and how you can challenge it. And again, I think that sometimes it's just asking questions. How can I support you? What does this look like? And believing somebody when they tell you something.
Right. Not questioning, especially the silent disabilities.
Read that again.
That's okay. What steps can organizations take to create a more inclusive and accessible workplace environment for individuals with disabilities? Thank you.
I think organizations need to encourage, hold sessions like this so that people can learn more, but also encourage people to bring forward what their needs are and then have a solid policy for meeting those needs and making sure that people have access to accommodations if they need accommodations, just to access. You know, when I started in this field, one of the things we had to do right at the beginning of the ADA was go out and teach people that it doesn't help to have an accessible restroom if they can't get from the parking lot into the building. You know, there was just barrier after barrier after barrier, and it really is important for organizations to think through what are the barriers and what are ways that we can alleviate those barriers.
So I'm going to take this question a little different area, and then of course we can continue on past the mic. What about in terms of you moving up in the organization, you know, in terms of development and roles and leadership, and, you know, maybe entering the C-suite levels? What are some of the obstacles you think organizations have for people that are disabled and is keeping them from getting in those spaces?
You mentioned the institutional barriers, the institutional ableism, and one you didn't mention was vocational rehabilitation. In that area, when I started, they would take every blind person should run a little market that sold snacks in the courthouse. And
I remember
it
that.
didn't matter how smart they were, it didn't matter how educated they were. Oh, you're blind now, you should run this little shop. And I had to lobby against the VR person in favor of my client to assist her to be able to decide for herself what kind of work she wanted to do and how that would look in her life. And, you know, it's really important that we recognize those institutional barriers and allow people to participate in the professional development activities. Allow people to identify their career path and move in that direction in the same way that other people would. Now, there are a lot of people who don't figure out how to move up. It really does take a focus, a plan, and an ally, someone who's working on your behalf, whether you have a disability or not. So you have to know where you want to go and then work with people who are already there to find out how do you get there, and then have an organization that supports that.
Go ahead and go on off of that because I got my college degrees at 35 years old. I went back to school in my early 30s. I was a product of Tempe Union High School District, where I'm now, which I'm now the vice president of their governing board. And it was failed by that district, not intentionally. They just didn't have classes and resources and teachers and diagnoses or anything that led to a successful education for me at the time. And when I was younger, I attempted to go to college and I just wasn't ready. My brain wasn't ready. So to kind of play off of what you're talking about, we have to let people develop. When you put these individuals, I work with this transition age where they're expected to go to VR and know what they want to do at 18 years old. And 3 years later, if they've changed their mind, my gosh, I'm sorry, but this was written in this document 3 years ago, you can no longer. I actually know people that were not able to switch careers because someone wrote when they were 18 that they wanted to work, they didn't want to work in that field. That's not okay. That doesn't happen to anybody else. Those are barriers. So what jobs can do, to kind of go back to the question, is they can offer education, obviously, sensitivity training, diversity training consistently, but regularly assessing it. And most importantly, while doing that, making sure you're listening to voices of disabled people, making sure that you're listening to their voices and incorporating what they're talking about into it, but consistently. Do not just let it become a policy that's doormatted. I just looked at a policy in our district that is completely opposite about what we talk about. We talk about how we're trauma informed in Tempe Union, and I'm looking at a policy recently that's from 2013. That's not where we are today. We have to make sure that we're internally auditing ourselves and making sure that we're staying with the times. It's okay not to know. I actually tattooed this on my body. Do the best you can until you know better. And when you do better, then when you know better, you do better. So just continuing to keep those conversations going and recognizing that it's not going away, and more people are getting diagnosed and recognizing that it's not something to be scared of. It's okay to have ADHD. Actually learn to make it your own, how you can work with it and live with it. So anyhow, ADHD and autism right there.
And it could be your superpower.
It sure as heck
Right.
can.
Definitely say as far as the growth of jobs. I know with the group of ladies that I interact with on a monthly basis that are disabled, the majority of them weren't working prior to COVID. They didn't have jobs. A lot of remote jobs weren't really an option. Now that a lot of jobs have gone remote, they were able to have a seat at the table with the employer and talk it through. And I've had an opportunity with my company, Toyota. I was disabled before we went remote. And the conversation that I like to have with HR and staff is, what are your needs? When you have a company that's vested, what are your needs? I was able to walk with an HR representative around the office. Every door, is this door going to open? Does it allow the wheelchair to get through? Are there any barriers at the elevator? What do you need for restroom accommodations? These conversations are important. I've been with the company for 21 years. So I really felt like when you got a company that's really going to invest in you, really take that time to listen to each individual, because my needs may not be the same as you.
Right.
That's important. And the ladies in my group who are working remotely now, more than half of them have found the same thing with their employers. It's just important to be able to advocate for yourself, speak up, like, hey, this is what I need. And then employer partner with you to make sure that they're able to make those accommodations. They've had desks that were delivered to their homes, ergonomic desks, things that they can make sure that they can be able to work remotely. And, we're in a different place now. So I like the way we're going with remote jobs.
Yes.
And things like that. I love to be able to see that there's an opportunity for us in this disability space to be able to continue to grow from an education perspective. You see that classes are online. I've been enrolled with Purdue University now. So it's like I'm, working, going to school and all of that, but, hey, I love the opportunities of being able to go to school online. These things done.
I think the data supports the remote work. The U.S. Labor Department states that for our community that's disabled, that they have, that they actually know of, because again, like you said, people are being diagnosed daily. It's up 80%. So think about prior to COVID, people were able, who didn't feel like they could get these jobs and in different levels, but remote work has allowed opportunities. So again, that is a benefit, and the data is showing that. Good. So let's go ahead. Next question we have for you. What impact does the growth, just cover that, sorry about that. In what ways can arts, media, technology, and popular culture contribute to challenging ableism and promoting a more inclusive society? That's a meaty one, yeah.
Social media has taken off, and I can definitely say I'm a part of that. I spend a large amount of my time really talking on social media and really just trying to bring awareness to a lot of the concerns, within, that I have as far as being disabled and some of the things that I encounter. What I find now is that I try to show people through whether it's TikTok and different things, I am doing the same things that you do each day. So you will see me on my TikTok account, just showing something simple as me washing clothes. Oh, I have 3 kids. I have a kid in college, you know what I'm saying? I'm washing clothes. You're going to see me cooking. These are all the things that everyone else does. I need to be able to show you that although I am disabled, I have the same needs. I have to do the same things that you are. And social media, which was just amazing to me. I've had some fun with it. I've developed a nice following of people that will get on and make comments. I'm so glad you did this video. People need to see more of this. And that's what, again, when people see it and they know better, then, we can, try to get rid of some of those stereotypes as well.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm following her. Yeah. I want to see some of this stuff. Good. That's positive. Thank you.
It's impressive. Not so great on the social media. I tried. But I do find it really, really important that we are normalizing
Yes.
the actual disability. The person with the disability playing the part needs to happen more and more often. And we need to normalize the fact that it's okay to just accept, let in, and be a part of it. One of the biggest shames to our country is that when we let individuals with disabilities out of the institutions that we did all those years ago, and we failed to educate and desensitize our community. So social media is an opportunity to desensitize. Movies are an opportunity for the world to see that it's not something to be scared of, ashamed of, walk away from. It's something that we can actually live amongst and be together. And if more people are open to recognizing that all of us have a diverse brain, a diverse mind, and diverse abilities, let's tap into what abilities we can do. So I believe that movies and social media and the way it's going, they're trying. But we need more people to listen to more disabled voices. So make sure that if someone with a disability puts something out there, support them, be a part of it, like them, follow them. Everybody, seriously, because that's how it's seen by the next person and seen by the next person, and the next generation can make it normalized. So that it's not. I mean, the very first person I contacted and told that I had autism to, someone I thought was a friend, actually said, "You don't really think so, do you?" We've got to normalize the fact that all of our brains are different. And again, don't deny what I'm telling you. I was just diagnosed for you to say it. But just normalize it. Desensitize it.
Yeah, I think media arts and you know, whether you're in the movies, social media, whatever, just exposure makes a huge difference. If you have, I don't know, seen the movie Coda, that means child of deaf adults. 3, I think, out of 4 of the family members are actually deaf adults playing deaf adults. The story is about their life as fishermen. It's not about their life as being deaf. It's about their life as fishermen and how that's being impacted by changes in the community and in the industry. Excuse me. I think that stories need to be just about life, but we need to see people with disabilities in those stories just living life. And you know, I was pleased when I was on Facebook and in the midst of the group chat, one of the women asked, "Does anyone know ASL? Because I'm deaf. That is my first language. It'd be nice to speak to someone in my first language." Just saying that educated hundreds of people. You know, so I think that social media, all of the arts have the opportunity to expand awareness.
Yeah, I don't think people think that ASL is a language. They think it's because you're disabled, this is a tool. Don't recognize it. Good. Liz.
I mean, I think everything has really been said. I think one of the things I stopped sharing about my disability online because it became inspiration for me, and I hated that. It made me so uncomfortable. And I noticed it, I think, a lot more where you can learn from somebody and say, oh, this is, you know, this is how somebody with MS gets through the summer or through the winter or whatever. Being very careful with that though, because when it comes to, oh my gosh, you're so inspirational. Well, I don't really have a choice. This isn't something I chose. And I think that that is something to be wary of. I think another thing is, you know, we have months like, you know, learning about disabled persons from disabled persons. There's a lot of amazing books and podcasts and movies. There's so much out there where you can, from the comfort of your home, learn about these things and learn how, you know, they're normal. They have relationships, you know, they have children. This is not, oh my gosh, again, look how inspirational. This is just living.
So you guys getting that? Because I know I've seen where people are like, I'm so inspired by you, but how that really made her feel. Like it's almost like it's making that person feel good to say that, but really you don't like it.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Why are you saying it? Are
Right.
you saying it because you're trying to, like, where is that? And a lot of times it is, I'm uncomfortable in this situation, so I'm going to say this to you because it makes me feel better, even though the person receiving it doesn't. It's not
Icky.
great.
Right. Yeah.
That's scary.
Thanks for sharing that. Again, it's these types of conversations, because I know, you know, we've done it before, people have done that, and again, unconsciously. But these conversations really help us understand that that's not how it's received. That's not how it's received.
Just want to add to that. It's not terribly inspiring that I work with people with disabilities, but people walk up to me and say that as well. And it's just, you know, it's like, no, I'm just doing a job, just like you do a job. It's not some major inspiration thing. So that's important to understand. People aren't living their lives to inspire you.
I don't know, I want to snap up there. Snap my fingers on that one. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that's good. Any other comments on that? Because I think this is something that I think in society generally, people are like, I'm inspired by that, or wow, you look beautiful today. I'm inspired that you do look so fabulous. But it's like every day, this is what you do. So I think this is a learn for a lot of people. Even again, I learn all the time. So in any comments, I want to make sure we really flesh this out. Anyone want to
I
share?
just want to piggyback on what Liz was saying. I can definitely understand where she's coming from with that comment, but just to add, it's really interesting because it really is the intent. You know, the message from that person or what they mean when they sign that. Because on the other side, I've had people mothers inbox me directly, you know, my child is, you know, new to, you know, this disability. My child was watching you. And, you know, do you mind, could you send a little, you know, message to my child? They happen to see you, they're following you, things like that. So I think, you know, it is, you know, it's really the intent behind what that person means. But I do think that there are some people that are really looking like, my child is in a really hard place and doesn't really want to move right now with disability. They don't really want to get out. They're watching you. They're not leaving their room. They're watching you and other people. And, you know, they really just need to be able to talk to somebody and talk through it. So I think especially when you're new to the disabled space, you know, I'm really new to it. I feel like I'm only 5 years in. So, hey, for the first, you know, most of my life, you know, I was walking, I was doing everything everybody else was. And then all of a sudden, 5 years ago, it just came out of nowhere. I got hit with an immune, you know, disease that totally took my muscles away for the most part. So, you know, with that, it was just like, you know, hey, I was one of those people that had to get on social media and sort of try to figure it out. Like, how am I going to do this? What does it look like? And now that I see the same thing happen with the people that are inboxing me, and it's like, you know, hey, Merlisha, do you have a moment? Could you speak to my child? Can you come to the school and talk to these kids or things like that?
Thank you for clarifying the intent, because that's important as well. So thank you for that. So another question, in your opinion, what are the key components of an inclusive society that promotes the rights and well-being of individuals with disabilities?
Nurturing really an environment, you know, diversity and inclusion. I think it's going to start there. I really want people to do it because it's the right thing to do, not just because, but that's what, you know, that's what we have to start. We really have to just get down to the basics and be able to, you know, again, have that conversation and bring people to the table to, you know, really initiate that conversation.
Good, have the conversation. So when you guys answer, you give us some examples, because we have people that this is the absolute first time they're stepping into this space, and we want to know, they're showing up. So tell us what we need to do.
Give me the question again. I'm sorry.
That's okay. In your opinion, what are the key components of an inclusive society that promotes the right and well-being of individuals with disabilities?
I'm gonna go back to how I talked about how it was a shame that 30 years ago, 40 years ago now, it's been a minute, we failed to desensitize and bring the community together on a topic that has literally taken over at this point. In Arizona, it's 1 in 36 boys before the age of 8 are being diagnosed with autism. That's still not including us girls that get diagnosed way later. That's huge. Our brains or whoever knows, whatever reason, I'm not a scientist, but it's here. And so we need to bring it together with education, training, connection, because we are a disconnected society. It's wonderful that you're able to connect through social media, but how much of us are connecting on human levels again? So it's here to stay. I believe we need connection, we need education, and we need desensitization of the normalizing of disabled bodies, minds, and humans.
Can you share something you think, a tip that could help us in terms of connecting?
Go speak to somebody out of your comfort zone today, tomorrow, I don't care. The next time you see someone that's like, I actually have never said hi to somebody like you. And it's okay, you don't have to add that in there, just say hi. Put yourself out there. Put yourself out there, get to know someone, and see if you can make a friend, because a lot of us in this world are lacking friends. And so make a friend, and before the end of the year, make it a goal to yourself, please, to meet someone that's different than anyone you've ever connected with, and try to find a connection.
Thank you. That's actionable, right? If we can do that.
The diversity and acceptance of the fact that diversity is a necessity for life is important. When you think about early on, and I mean way back when tribes were the thing, and those tribes had hunting parties. I heard this on NPR years ago. So they did research. The tribes had approximately 10 to 12 members run the hunting party. On the hunting party, There would be one person who might be a priest or might be gay. They didn't have to feed anybody, so that meant that particular hunting party had less food to take back. There'd be another person, 10% of males have color blindness. Can you imagine how helpful it is to see the pattern change in that bush and realize there's a leopard there? If there's a person with ADHD, and there's 12% is ADHD. Oh, wait a minute, I'm listening to everything. That sound behind us could be dangerous. All of that diversity is important. Our society, when we shifted to from the industrial into more of the intellectual and more everything's written down and you must sit in a chair to learn, tried to erase that part of the diversity in our people. And without that diversity, we lose creativity, we lose awareness, we lose a lot of things. So I think just making sure that we recognize that that diversity is important to the survival of humankind.
We have all voices at the table, all representation, absolutely.
And we throw around the term ally a lot. I like the term accomplice. Because an ally is just somebody who's like, oh, I understand. And it can be a very passive thing. We need accomplices, we need questions. So if somebody says something like, you know, that's so lame, what do you mean by that?
Right.
I have an accommodation to work from home in the summer. I was met with resistance, and basically they wanted to write in there that I would be work at a diminished capacity. And I said, what do you mean by that?
Diminished.
Diminished. I'm sure not working I get more done at home than I do at work. But what do you mean by that? Because it's also, it also is curious, right? You're not immediately saying what you just said was ableist. It's what did you mean by that? Because that could be seen as XYZ. And so I think that in the community, and I always did that as a teacher, right? Because it's a gentle but firm way to correct kids. They loved the R word. What do you mean by that? Let's pop up a dictionary. Let's look at the root of that word and how it was utilized in times to institutionalize and to sterilize. And it is that, again, what do you mean by that? Can you help me understand where you're coming from? And some people will just be jerks, and it's okay to say, okay, and move on with your day, because some people don't want to learn. Some people want to stay in their place of, nope, this is what I believe. And I think that people like you are lazy and entitled and must be nice to have a handicap, sticker. I'd trade you my handicap sticker if you took my disability. And so I think being an accomplice and being okay when you're wrong, because sometimes I am a person with a disability and I still do things wrong. And and it doesn't feel great. It's embarrassing, but it's also a time to say, okay, that did not work. Where did I go wrong? What could I have done better? And being okay to fail, because if you're not okay to fail, you'll never have those little successes where you're saying hi to somebody, or you're making a friend, or you're having a deeper understanding of something that maybe you didn't know before.
I love that you gave us the tool to ask questions and be transparent, and understand that it's okay to be wrong and you want questions, and I also love, because you hear this a lot, ally and allyship. I do like accomplished. I'm going to steal that.
I learned that in one of my teacher areas, because we are accomplices with our students. So whatever kind of oppression they are fighting, we are accomplices with them, because I'm going to be standing right behind you. Whatever you're fighting, I am right behind you. I'm not just saying, hey, you shouldn't do that. It's an active thing. Allyship is passive, and it's still a positive thing.
Yes.
Posting things, if you are an able-bodied person, posting things, on your social media to get that attention. But then what is your action?
What's next?
And allowing people that you talk to be wrong, which is why, again, we ask with curiosity. What did you mean by that?
Good, thank you. Thank you for that. Very good. So another question for you. What can we do to recognize and avert ableism in our day-to-day lives? Everyday lives, doing our thing.
I think just recognizing it,
Mhm.
right? I think sometimes we go about life just not recognizing things and understanding that it is human nature to have these preconceived thoughts and ideas and challenging yourself mostly and saying, you know, because we think things in our head all the time, right? I used to tell my students, there are some things that are inside thoughts and they just pop up, challenging that. Why did I just think that?
That's good.
Why did I just, where is that coming from?
Mhm.
Is it because in elementary school, you know, we made fun of this kid? Is it because I've never seen somebody play, you know, somebody in a movie that actually had the disability? Where is this stemming from? And I think sometimes just the recognition in yourself, you don't even have to have action with it. Just the recognition. And then that's really with any kind of bias. It's just, why am I thinking this? Where is this coming from? And how can I challenge it? Or maybe talking to somebody too that you trust, like, is this something that you learned, right? Is this something, how can I move past this? So.
That's good. That's good. Pausing and asking the question, why am I uncomfortable in this situation? Why am I uncomfortable approaching someone who has a physical disability? Well, yeah, I love that. That's really, you guys think that's really good? That's a really good, again, these are tips that we can do. And we can, you know, turn the button on and be actionable right now. Thank you.
So once you've recognized it, then I'm going to challenge you to diversity by infiltration. Wherever you're on a committee, wherever you're in a group, you bring it up. Don't wait for someone else to bring up the topic. If there's a conversation about scheduling a meeting, say, well, how do we make sure people have access? If there's a conversation about taking a trip, well, will this person be able to join? How do we make sure this person can go on that trip if they want to? Infiltrate, make sure that your voice brings up diversity, and then you'll have a whole new group of people to help make accessibility a reality in your areas.
And that changes the conversation. Yes, that's it. All these tips. I mean, you should have, we got this. Thank you.
It's too like nailed it. I'm gonna take a lot of your question ideas, which those are pretty impressive. A lot of us don't realize how many implicit biases that we have. And so really just starting to sit down and think, what biases am I not aware of? Because there's probably a lot more than any of us are willing to. And so I love your idea, the why that comes in your head. I've never heard that way. And I really appreciate that, because a lot of this is just infiltrated into the way our lives are. So kind of, again, going back to that desensitizing, we have to just kind of filter it in. So this is the new way. We're going to all be recognizing this. So if you take their ideas and their suggestions and just bring it into more and more conversations and more realities, and you make it part of your reality, just like everybody else, that's how we are going to hopefully just see more and more people seeing the benefit of accepting, recognizing, and realizing that if we amplify, if we provide, and we give resources, tools, and everything that disabled people need to meet their full potential, that all of the community is going to benefit. We benefit when we work better together. So.
And giving people tools they need is just another form of equity. I just want to be giving the tools that I need so I can compete, you know, and level set the playing field. And people see that differently. They can see that as giving the advantage, but really you just tools so that you can be equitable.
So just to piggyback, and the one thing that's again to really take some time on to education self to help, you know, dispel some of those, you know, misconceptions that we have. And I tell people, you know, you sort of have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, you know, in those situations, and put yourself in a situation where you can ask questions and not be afraid, just still being respectful, you know, of that person and just having an honest conversation. But I really think that that whole space of just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, asking those questions, getting out of your comfort zone to really ask those things and doing something you haven't done before. It's like, yeah, start.
Thank you, thank you. Be uncomfortable. Question, how can we challenge and change society's attitudes and norms to foster an inclusive culture of acceptance?
I really think it's going to be recognizing achievements too for those
Yes.
who are disabled and just normalizing. You know, just again, just really seeing that process is normal, recognizing it and just bringing it to the front. So it just blends in and it's a part of just every day. You know, we are disabled, but it's just we're every day we're here and we are going to, meshing everything together.
So do you mind sharing, like, what is normalizing the achievements? Like, what does that look like?
I really think it's for us, whether you're in a workplace or, really at home, when you see things and you don't really have to cite, like we were saying earlier, like, oh, you're an inspiration, you're doing anything. These are normal activities. You know what I'm saying? You can recognize those achievements of others, but this is really normal. So what I'm looking for is people to be able to sit back and acknowledge in your mind. So as you see, oh, this person has graduated, they're doing this, they're working, this is all normal. You may not be used to seeing it, but this really is normal for so many of us with disabilities. And then once you can really conceptualize it, then it becomes reality.
Making a highlight reel of something that everyone does anyways,
Right.
but it's highlighted when you have a disability. Thank you for sharing that. I want to get the microphone. Sorry, that's okay.
I forgot I had a job.
So, when I think of normalizing achievements, we have to stop centralizing and making it a huge achievement for someone to have gone to prom with someone with a disability or for someone to have gotten a job with a disability. Everyone, if we normalize it and just make it more the norm, then it just becomes the reality. Again, we have to lead the way with that, though. We have to find the right why and when to amplify the voices of disabled people, because amplifying their successes is only going to go so far if it's one, reaching the right audience, and it's two, making the right action happen afterwards. So you have to really stop and think, am I doing this for a purpose because it makes me feel good to post this? Or am I doing this because this is actually going to amplify their voice and help them reach more of their full potential? Is it going to help them achieve more by doing this for them? Recently, and if you haven't watched it, I'm not someone that watches a lot of reality television, but there's a young woman in Velvet, I do not remember her last name, and she is deaf and she is blind. I'm sorry, she is blind and she is autistic, and she went on America's Got Talent, and she sang her heart out. And if more people just listened and learned from people's talents and their abilities, that's when you amplify. That's when you show the world, because they're not amazed because, oh my gosh, they did this. They're amazed because, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And that person deserves the achievements and awards, not gets a medal for every little achievement award. So.
I think it's important to recognize and make space for. So when you're in a situation where you're interviewing people for jobs, don't interview them based on whether they have eye contact, because eye contact is sometimes a problem for a person who has autism or neurodiversity, anxiety, a lot of reasons that a person might not have eye contact. So what is it that you need for the job? Does the job require them to stare you in the eyes? It's not the point of it. So we need more people to recognize what is needed in the workplace and look for people who can do what is needed in the workplace. And whether they can do that from a remote location or in the office, it doesn't matter. If the job can be done remotely, then hire people who can do the job remotely. For some people with disabilities, that remote work hasn't been a good thing. You know, it really depends on the individual and how they're impacted by their disability. So we really have to expand our acceptance, expand our awareness, and focus in on what we need and how we need to work together, rather than on those ancillary, oh, you're like me or you're not like me, you know. That has always been a problem. It took how long for women to get into workplaces because they only wanted to hire people like them and they were all men. And, you know, the same thing for races, various races to move upward because, well, this person is a real good fit. Why are they a real good fit? Because they're kind of like me. Their family's kind of like mine. You know, so each of those things creates a barrier that has nothing to do with the job. We really need to look at what the people are capable of and what the job needs to bring people into workplaces.
Skill sets and talents. And that's a really good point, though, like in terms of like, well, because I mean, when I was in leadership, I can remember being on panels and people just really nitpicking, well, she didn't shake my hand firm. I mean, she's not confident. But what if she didn't have the capacity? And you guys, I mean, if you're in leadership, you know these conversations have happened and they probably continue to do so now. Or looking at you, they didn't look at me and they're not, you know, confident or they don't self-assured where they may not be able to. So I think that awareness in the corporate space, in leadership with training and these types of conversation forums will help that. But think about how it expands and think about the talent that's out there that we're not even tapping into because of our own norms, whatever that is, right? Whatever those norms are. So good, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to look at this from my teacher lens. So I taught junior high and high school. And so at any time I have 30 kids in front of me for an hour, we have something we have to get done. Regardless of if they're disabled or able-bodied, they all need something different. And that's the thing, like what is normal?
Right.
Understanding and having empathy that regardless, everybody needs something different to succeed. And it shouldn't be a barrier to get that, especially for people with disabilities. And I think if we, and the word normalize, but I can't think of a different word. If we make that kind of the norm, is everybody needs something different, right? If I had a kid come in and they are tired because guess what? They worked till 11 o'clock last night because their dad lost their job and they're trying to help their family out. To be honest with you as a teacher, hey, if you need to sleep the next hour, I can catch you up on. Because that's what you need right now to be successful. Because guess what? You have 5 more classes after this, and you probably have to go work another shift. Understanding, and I think because I was a teacher for so long, looking at somebody and saying, this is what they need right now. Okay, how can I help with that? And like you said, like if the kid sleeps, I did get marked down on one of my evaluations for it. And I was like, cool, I don't care because in that moment, that's what that kid needed. I always had a snack drawer because I understood that not every kid had accessibility to food. That's something I could provide. Everybody needs something different. And as soon as we start understanding that as a baseline, then it becomes more normal to say, well, this person has a disability and this is what they need. So Liz needs to do a lot of her meetings in the morning because that's when she has a lot of capacity. And when it's 300 degrees outside, once 1 o'clock hits, that capacity is gone. And I can do like administrative tasks or whatever else. But even just having that, and my team is really great at that. We have our meetings first thing because we all understand this is just something that helps me. I can be more present. So understanding that regardless, everybody has needs. Everybody gets to diminish in a different way and making that a normal thought.
Because we're all diverse.
Yes.
And people think diversity is either race, gender. And a lot of people stop there, but they don't realize diversity is how we think, how we show up, how we solve problems, our gifts and talents. And it's a part of being disabled is part of a diverse group. It's not something separate that we have to make you normal. We have to all be inclusive and understand that we're all part of this diversity bucket. We all have something that's unique, a superpower, I like to call it. So we have one last question. We're going to do some Q&A. So start thinking about your questions for our panel here. How can we ensure that accessibility is not viewed as an afterthought? Kind of touching that a little bit, but rather part of the design and development process for products, services, physical spaces, like everything we do. Are we asking the question, how is this going to impact, or what can we do? Is this going to, how we're going to impact someone who may not be able to walk a mile to the office? How are we going to impact someone that's desk may not be the proper height, or anything, products in the store when you're shopping, any of those types of things? What can we do?
Listen to different kinds of people. I think, again, disability is not a monolith. So you can't, it's hard to say like, well, this product is really good for disabled people. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like, is it something that, you know, somebody who has mobility issues can use? Is it somebody who has like, what does that look like? And I think it has been brought up is not just having something and saying, okay, I've checked that box, I'm moving on. That's not how it works. It's a consistent questioning and development and listening. I think listening is a skill that everybody needs to work on. And again, I'm coming from teaching and kids struggle with that, but constantly asking, how can I make this better? What needs to happen to make this more inclusive? And it's okay not to know the answer. As long as you keep asking the questions, I think that is really important.
And that means we need people that have disabilities, decision makers at the table, calling the shots, being able to have a voice in these spaces.
So there are a variety of things they're doing at ASU, and there are little pockets. One, a group of instructional designers who design how courses are online got together and created a course for faculty on how to create accessible content. Another group of, I don't even know what group it is, has reached out to ask for student staff that they can hire who can be part of teams to test accessibility for products coming in. Another group is working to add just the question with security review when you purchase it. So when you purchase software, there's a lengthy security review. You know, how many people are going to use it? Will it be used by students? Will student personal information be on this software? Is this secured by XYZ terms that I don't know? Lots of questions. So we're trying to get them to add, have you checked the accessibility? And just to ask, have you checked it, will trigger something in the person who's purchasing. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. And then figure out who do they need to make sure it's accessible for, because if it's going to be used by 4 people in your office and none of them have a need for accessibility, you can probably buy it. But if it's going to be used by 100,000 students, that's a different thing. So begin to ask those questions, begin to put those systems in place, test things, to train people and to look for the accessibility issues.
And that is why ASU is what, number what, 1 or 2 in innovation? Number one innovation. That's right. Yes, I did pay tuition there, so.
I'm really glad they're part of the conversation. Having those conversations, obviously, you need to continue to delve into it regularly. Assessing, like doing full-on policy assessments, employee assessments, making sure that every employee is feeling valued and heard. Everyone's thinking outside of the box, doing so consistently, having these conversations, being a part of the change, guys. We can all lead the way by just making sure that these conversations don't stop and that we're asking the questions that lead to more things being productive, more things being efficiently done, and more people having access. Kind of like using that universal design for like learning model almost is really what needs to happen across every spectrum and realm of work, education, community life, because we all benefit when we learn and hear from each other. So if you're not including those voices, I can assure you those voices were an afterthought.
And sharing best practices. If the organization's doing it, pick up the phone, figure out what they're doing, ask them. People love to share, right? People like to share information.
I would say, for me, as far as like you were saying, having a seat at the table, that part is really important, but it's not just a seat, it's at every level. So for
Yes.
instance, people know that, you know, I spend a lot of time marketing and discussing the wheelchair, you know, for others. But I'm involved with this company on every level. So from everything from R&D, from research development, they need my input. You know, as far as what is performance like for you? What is it like in your environment in Arizona versus someone who lives in New York? You're getting my feedback. We're talking about price points, how it's going to be marketed. I have a seat at the table in every facet when it comes to this particular company and making sure that this message is getting across to people and just, you know, making really have a voice, you know, in this. So we're meeting monthly on a, you know, monthly basis to be able to discuss, you know, what these needs are. And, you know, who will be, you know, who will be impacted most by having this chair and the functions that we need. Again, how can we make this, our website user-friendly for them with abilities? They can be able to get on there and understand it. Is it easy for them to be able to get, you know, to maneuver through the website? And we, you know, definitely dot our I's and cross our T's. So we're involved with every step of the measure. I think in most companies do that, not just at the entry level, but coming in all the way up to the executive level, then it makes a difference.
And that company will be Toyota, right?
Well, there's one of them, but I also spend a lot of time marketing with part-time to know the chair itself. So that's how I started doing work to be able to advocate for those who needed seat elevation to be able to get back into the workforce, whether you're working at Toyota or anywhere else. People needed the opportunity for a long time. I couldn't reach the copying machine.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So being able to, again, to have this company to be able to, you know, provide feedback and say, this is what we need. This is, you know, what I'm going to be able to provide as far as input. But it's every level, you know, just having that feedback and being able to have someone that's going to listen and be receptive to what you're saying.
Okay, very good, excellent. So we're going to now move over into our questions and answer phase. And we're gonna, thank you, Amber's gonna have the mic. And, you know, again, we have a safe space. Thank you, these ladies have been transparent and have just been gracious in sharing. So we're gonna go ahead and answer our first question.
First of all, thank you for doing this. My name is Rick Human. My sister, Judy Human, some of you guys know, in term passed away about 4 or 5 months ago. And the fights that have started back 50, 60, 70 years ago, about institutionalizing people, all kinds of different stuff. This is so important that this continues, the work that goes on. The 504 Act back in the 70s and what happened then, to the ADA, to lots of different things over the last 50 years. This is just another step, and the discussion today is so important, and the realities of people, and the challenge we face right now with this whole, use my friends, BS about the woke society and diversity, equity, and inclusion being shot down in a lot of states. Just look at it right. Diversity means a lot of different things. And I just appreciate the panelists that are here today, continuing the work that's been going on for so many years. So thanks.
Thank you, Rick.
I just wanted to piggyback off of that because it kind of stole part of what I was going to say too, but I want to thank you all because I know how difficult that can be to discuss some of the things that you've discussed personally today. I have two sons, 27 and 25, on ADHD, which was very difficult for him to get through school. And then a daughter who is now going into 4th grade this year. And she was diagnosed with 5 different low-bearing ADHD, PTSD, all of 5 of them. But low with the combination made it very difficult for her as a toddler. So I And one of the things that you brought up is the way that we were brought up years and years ago. It's been a hard time fighting that, and my daughter is very much a leader. And these are what helps me overcome what we were taught when we were early on, and what we experienced early on from grandparents, you know, and all those generations that were very different. So that I can teach her, and she helps lead those in class. And when she sees something that's not right, speaks up about it and says, no, that's not how we say it, that's not how we do it, or this person's not this or that. So having these forums is actually really, really helpful. So, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, thank you all. I don't have a lot of exposure to this topic, so it's been very educational for me. And I learned a lot, and I do with a lot of things wrong, and intent is really important. And I have a question around that whole intent topic. You know, when I approach disability, I think like, how do I just treat everyone normal? You know, everyone the same. That's been my approach. And what I hear is like, you know, when I talk to somebody and I hear like their life story or what they're doing, and they don't have a disability, and it inspires me, right? And then if I'm talking to somebody that has a disability and we're having a similar conversation and I'm inspired by that, you know, that may come out just like it would with someone else. So there's no difference in intent behind that, right? And so like, how do you manage that? Like, you know, because you're just approaching someone normal, you know, and if you didn't have a disability, I would still be inspired by what you're telling me, you know. So it's like, and now I'm like scared. You know, I talked to Olivia, I'm like, I'm scared now that my work is completely wrong of all the things that I've done wrong, like the blind leading the blind. Okay, like.
That's why you're here, Brian. Don't be hard on yourself.
You say something like that because your intent is that I don't know what I'm doing, and yet you're looking to me to lead you. You know, so you use that term to kind of like clean it, and that's what the intent is. But at the same time, you could be hurting someone's feelings or something, you know. So like, it's. So now you're like, now I'm like scared. Like, what do we say? You know, like we want to step down. So any help there would be helpful.
I mean, just being a person is hard, right? Because a lot of times we'll say something to somebody with whatever intent, but they did not take it like that, and then it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's okay, like if your intent is you're really inspired. Why are you inspired? Are you inspired because, like for me, I'm getting a doctoral degree, so people will say like, that's really inspiring. Cool, because it's really hard to do. But you know, when it's I'm inspired because you have multiple sclerosis and you're doing this, well, okay. And I think that it's okay, because I might take something personally and Dr. Allison might not. Like, everybody is different, and it's okay to mess up. It's okay to say to somebody, I'm sorry, that was not my intent. However, I understand that it hurt you. How could I have done better? Because in recognizing too and naming people's emotions, again, this is the teacher coming out of me, recognizing emotions and saying, I'm sorry that I hurt you. How could I have done that better?
On this end of it though, like I would struggle to get a doctorate degree, right? And then I would struggle if I had multiple sclerosis. So the two of those things together are very inspirational that you can overcome those and do that. So it's like, you know, so that like you just, you know what I mean? Like it's just hard.
I have a choice in one. I don't have a choice in the other.
Okay.
That's the difference.
So maybe that could be a helpful difference. Like I have a choice. PS, a doctoral degree is not easy, and I've literally never read so much in my life. My MS, I can't control. I have a a seventh grader as a daughter. The small children in the back are my niece and nephew who are living there, my parents. I don't have a choice because I want to get up for my daughter every day. We have a golden retriever, and if you have a puppy, you don't get choices, right? I don't have a choice in that. I do have a choice in my doctorate. So maybe that's a helpful thing. But again, we're humans, it's messy. I mess up all the time. And I think that's an okay thing. I think that's what makes us humans, is that we mess up and we have those conversations. Because if life was perfect, we wouldn't need to do things like this. Does that help?
We have two on the spot.
Yeah, I just also want to say, when we got into that era of political correctness and we left a whole bunch of words out of our vocabulary, we stopped talking to each other. So don't just eliminate your speech. Use your speech and then expand on it to get to understanding.
Good.
Thank you, Saskia Christian here. Good morning. Thank you so much for sharing those really insightful perspectives on ableism and how we can embrace inclusion. So I just have one question on what are really the top 3 strategies you perceive organizations can deploy to truly make mental wellness a paradigm and embrace those who are really struggling with ADHD, complex trauma, and all those mental wellness conditions.
Step one, make sure that you find neurodiversity training. And make sure that it's being trained by people that know, understand, and live with disabilities. It's absolutely okay to have a team of people, but it absolutely has to be the voice of. So make sure that you are seeking out those conversations. I like these kind of panels, but making sure that you're bringing in those voices regularly, especially if your corporation brings in employees regularly. That's even more so. If you have a good long staff that lasts a year, you might be able to pull it off annually, but if you have staff that's coming out, make sure that you're continuously having the conversation, continuously making sure that people are being educated and that the conversation is forthcoming and transparent, and that everybody in the company feels valued and heard.
So I know we're at the end, but this lady is waiting to ask a question. You sure you're okay? All right.
Let me take it up next.
Okay. You sure?
Because I know get out of it.
You can answer your question. Yes. please. Sorry, but she was waiting for quite some time.
It's a question / comment. I work in the DEI space. And one of the comments that Crystal made was children are really inclusive, which is very true. And from my research, I've seen that our attitudes start forming as we gain experiences and values and see our parents and grandparents, and then they are formed by the age of 12 to 16. So my question is, this is an excellent plan, and I have been learning a lot for the past 6 years also. How do we retain that flexibility in children? Now, what can we do to take this kind of exposure to our children? Because not everybody has this luxury to get exposed to diversity. We are all in our silos. So how can we achieve that?
Our teacher expert.
So for me, one of the things that completely changed my career and changed the way I look at DEI is becoming a national board certified teacher, because part of that is understanding diversity, equity, and inclusion in your classroom. It is a very difficult process. The Chandler district has actually completely changed how they recognize it, which has been a really positive step forward. I mean, I want my child to have national board certified teachers because they understand that. Try not to blame teachers, right? They're already overwhelmed. Some of them don't have time for the extra professional development. And to be quite honest with you, some of the DEI training I got as a teacher, I was like, I'm not even listening, because you're speaking to all of us like we're all the same person. We all have the same kids. It's not helpful. So asking schools, how can I help? You know, Chandler has a DEI department asking, how can I help? How can we bring teachers to events like these? Because they're the ones with our kids, right? That kind of stuff is important. So just making the conversation bigger in spaces where those kids are.
Good answer. So we're gonna wrap up. Thank you to our amazing panelists for being here today. We learned a lot. I mean, you guys were a really great audience. I'm sure online everyone was so engaged. We also want to thank Toyota Financial and Intel and SRP and Wells Fargo for sponsoring. So thank you. We have representatives here from these organizations. Just an update, August 24th is our economic update luncheon. So go on our webpage and look at that. Our next DEI event is going to be September 26th. And our topic is going to be focused around Hispanic Heritage Month. Thank you all so much. It's been great.